Welcome, I'm Amy McDonald, director of this joint Happy One Day After Valentine's Day. This is part of our programming for Valentine's Day week. How many of you, this is your first time here? Wow. I know why you're here. How many men are here? How many men in the audience? Here we go.
Woo! Yes!
I am not a reader of romance novels, but there are women on my team who are. And I was not unaware of the genre's increasing popularity and growing presence in bookstores. So I was game for organizing tonight's conversation, as I said, as part of our Valentine's Day week programming. I am now obsessed with the genre, and particularly these three women. Jasmine Guillory, Hazelwood, and Beverly Jenkins. I am not going to introduce them with thorough bios because their backgrounds and how they started writing romance novels is so interesting, and I wanted to leave it to Kalyani, our moderator this evening, to delve into their stories. Kalyani.
Hi, guys.
Saxena.
Yes.
Kalyani Saxena is a passionate romance reader and has produced several pieces on NPR on the topic. She is a producer for WBUR, NPR's midday show, Here and Now. She is the perfect moderator for the evening. We'll be taking your questions throughout the hour. Go to slido.com and type in romance. At the end of the hour, Jasmine, Ellie, and Beverly will be signing copies of their latest novels. You saw them in the lobby. Thank you to our partner, Bookline Booksmith. Take it away.
Oh my goodness. Yay. This is on, right? You guys can hear me? Okay, amazing. I'm so excited to be here. And it is the day after Valentine's Day, but I feel like romance is all about love and love is eternal, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually want to start with a love story. And I specifically want to ask you all about your love story with romance, when your love affair with romance began. And I will start with my own story, so give you guys some time to actually think about it. For me, romance has always kind of been there. Anytime there were two characters that seemed like maybe they were going to kiss, I was there for it. And the first thing that I can remember is Sweet Valley High. And we were on a family vacation, and I was reading Sweet Valley High, and my dad, who's in the front row here today.
Ooh, Dad!
He came up, and he was like, "What are you reading? What is this content?" I should also say I was 10, maybe. And I was like, "No, Daddy, you don't understand. I'm reading it for the mystery, not the romance." There was no mystery whatsoever in Sweet Valley High, but he's clearly come around. He's here today. And then after that, I took a long break and read Sally Thorne's The Hating Game in 2017, and then since then, it's just been nonstop. So that's my start of my love affair with romance. But let's start with you guys. You first, Beverly.
2017.
Okay, but to be fair,
I got shoes older than you, girl.
I have to clarify, I was not born in 2017.
No, I grew up with the Doris Day, Rock Hudson, pillow talk kind of stuff. The romance of James Bond and Big Valley with Heath and all those kinds of things. And then I got to marry a romance hero, so it all worked out.
Oh. Rub it in. You next, Jasmine.
Well, I grew up watching a lot of soap operas with my grandmothers.
Classic.
Their stories of what we call them. So I grew up watching and being obsessed with soap operas, but I read romance novels kind of on and off, but I didn't really get into them until about 15 years ago. I was going through a really hard time in my life, and I discovered the romance novels are the best
Yes.
when you're going through a hard time in your life. And I read was like a year period where I was like read like 300 romance novels.
As you should.
And they really got me through.
Yes.
And so I've been obsessed ever since.
300 is like a normal amount, I would say.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
You next, Allie.
So my first romance novel, like that wasn't actually labeled as a romance novel, was a Harlequin book that I read when I want to say like 3 years old. No, but I was way too young to read that, and the reason I picked it up. So this was back when I was still living in Italy. I did not speak English at the time. I really probably was 10 or something. And the main characters, their names were Ross and Rachel. And at the time I was watching Friends on TV. So I was like, well, this is a book about Ross and Rachel. They had sex on like page 3.
Page 3.
I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I never stopped. I have been reading romance ever since.
And I feel like page 3 is almost, I mean, it depends when you're reading that from, but sometimes it just really starts. Like first line, you're in the middle of a scene. You're like, how did we get here? You know, I'm glad that we're all here talking about romance, and it seems like we've got a lot of romance fans here. Can you confirm? Yeah. But I feel like maybe a few years ago, it didn't always feel like this was something people could be excited openly about. Like, I didn't start talking publicly about the fact that I read romance until I started reporting on and covering romance, and I felt comfortable enough to do that. And there's sort of a little bit of scorn, I feel like, that comes around the genre, or maybe that's fading a little bit. But things have started to shift in recent years, and I'm curious what that has been like from your perspective, and if you kind of have any stories where people have maybe not exactly sneered, but been like, "Oh, you write romance?" So, Jasmine, why don't we start with you?
I mean, I've definitely had people ask me, not quite in these words, but sort of like, "When are you going to write a real book?" But like, yes, there's definitely some sneering towards romance, but I just don't care. I mean, it's just right, like, because like you can't spend too much time caring about what other people think about it, especially since people who love romance are the most fun. So why should I spend my time like trying to convince someone, no, you should really eat chocolate instead of eating celery all day long? Like, chocolate tastes good. Have you tried it? Like,
Yeah.
No,
Exactly.
I don't want to try it. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry you hate fun. And I'm supposed to remind you all that you can submit questions via Slido and the hashtag romance. Very predictable. But Beverly, I know there's a story. I think you were at a Miami book fair and someone said something to you.
yeah,
and you really had the ultimate takedown. So
yeah.
I feel like I have to hear it.
I was at the Miami Book Fair, and if anybody's ever been there, it's just a fabulous, fabulous event. Well, the hosts provided us a little van to go from the venue back to the hotel and back and forth. So I'm on the van, and there's a woman there who says, "Well, what do you write?" And I said, "Romance." "Oh." I said, "And what do you write?" "I write literature." "Really?" I said, "So, how many books you got in print?"
Bet she didn't want to answer that.
She turned bright red. And we never heard from Miss Literature again for the rest of the ride. Thank you very much.
And Allie, your books have kind of really exploded in the last 3 years. I feel like the period where we can say romance is like inescapable. And I mean that in the best possible way. What has it been like to kind of enter romance as a genre? I mean, I know you've been in fandom spaces, and we're going to get to that. But first, I want to hear about what it was like to kind of join this genre at a time where readership is really enthusiastic.
Yeah, I never had the experience of someone coming to me and telling me, when will you start writing real books? But I think that is because I debuted in 2021. And so there were, I think, 3 books that were instrumental in making sort of romance mainstream. And like you said, The Hating Game, and then The Wedding Date, and The Kiss Quotient. They were these like very big book, and they, not to say that romance wasn't there before, like I had been reading my entire life, but like those books sort of exploded on Book Talk, and I think people were picking them up and been like, oh, it's a cool thing to read this book.
Yeah.
So I have been so lucky in a way, but at the same time, I mean, I was reading books with clinch covers in public when I was in grad school. So,
That's the only way to read them.
and I love them. So
Yes, we were talking about this in the back, but for people who don't know, the clinch cover is the one with the 2 naked people, and there's usually like 1 or 2 or 3 garments of clothes missing, and they're and now they've been replaced with cartoon illustrations, which are also fine and great, and we love them. When I say we, I don't necessarily mean Beverly. So, we've talked a little bit about romance as a genre and how reception to it has changed. But I find it to be just like when it's done well, so magical. Like it feels almost like an element of chemistry, no pun intended, when everything kind of works and you feel these characters connect in this way. So one of the questions that we have is, who are some authors that have really influenced that for you? And I guess what about their writing kind of helped you discover the magic of romance? What makes romance magical to you? So we can start with you, Beverly.
I'll go back to the olden days. Lavrell Spencer, could write a scene. And if you want some meaty, just make you weep, make you, turn upside down, get Lavrell Spencer. She was so great. And then when she stopped writing, we were all like at a wake.
Yeah.
We just wanted to weep. But she was very, very good. And I would recommend that those of you who have not read, Vows or The Hummingbird or any of her books to check her out, okay?
All right. How about you, Jasmine?
I mean, obviously, Beverly Jenkins.
Yeah, she's right here.
I think one of the things that's key to me in any book is like caring about the characters.
Yeah.
And like they're characters that I still like think about, like, I wonder how they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think that to me, like, because I have to care about a character and like want them to have their happy ending, and then see that connection between other people. And so I love that I like have that always to look forward to in her books.
I have to say, when romance novels don't have an epilogue, I'm kind of like, I feel a little like,
Yeah.
but what happened next?
Need a little bit of
And I was talking to someone
6 months later.
Yeah, 6 months later, a year later, 2 days later. Just tell me what happened next.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone a little bit earlier this week for Valentine's Day, and they were asking me, like, does romance ever not have a happily ever after? And I was like, no. Like, that's I think one of the things that really makes it so special is that comfort and that feeling of like, whatever these characters are. And I like when they suffer. I say that proudly. I like when my characters go through a journey and really like have to fight their way back to each other. But the happily ever after is really important. But Ali, I also want to get your response to an author you love.
So I think the author that I sort of, I don't know, I think she made me as a person is Nalini Singh. She has written, there are 2 series. One is the, Elena and Raphael series. I don't even know what the actual official name of the series is, but it's about, angels and and the other one is the Psy Changeling series. And, you know, she writes paranormal. And for me, that's, I don't know, like whatever she wrote was magic. And I was, again, probably too young, but I loved everything about it. And then Sherry Thomas in her historicals. For a few years, I was also kind of limited by what was translated in Italian because I didn't speak English, but like, I think those are the two authors that I'm like, wow, I was so young when I was reading them.
I don't remember who I was before I read your books. Well, Jasmine sort of already alluded to this, but we have a legend with us on stage. It's Beverly Jenkins right here. You have been writing in this genre for so long and so wonderfully, and you have such a strong fan base. And you have seen this genre change a lot and go through a lot of cyclical things and improve in ways and maybe take some steps back. So I would love if you could, give us your perspective as someone who really has stood the test of time for readers.
First of all, we would not have romance without y'all.
Yeah.
The readers built the house. We wrote the books. But if y'all hadn't bought them or purchased them, we wouldn't be here today. So the fan base and the people who read romance have not changed.
Yeah.
They are still voracious, rabid, will kick your butt.
Oh, 100%.
Readers, just like they were in the early 90s. Some of you are daughters and nieces and cousins of people who bought Rosemary Rogers and Kathleen Woodwess and Joanna Lindsay. So the books have changed. They're no longer rapey.
Yes, thank God.
I mean, there's no other word to call it but rapey.
Yeah.
We've seen heroines go from being size 6 and white and blonde to curvy, women of color, women of all shapes, sizes. Romance now has love for every gender, for every identity. And we're a better genre for it.
Yeah.
So if y'all keep buying, we'll keep writing.
Here's to that.
That's my little thumbnail kind of thing.
Well, I want to talk about diversity. I feel like we have to kind of tackle the elephant in the room, or not tackle, but maybe gently romance into submission. The genre is, and has been for a long time, a space for whiteness, and was written by white authors and consumed by white readers. And we're seeing that change. And I feel like a lot of that change has happened in the last decade or so. But, when you put your first book out, there were not many. No, and we still don't have many Black historical romance writers.
No,
we don't. And so
me.
in the we need you.
Well, not really. We have Vanessa now.
Yeah.
Have Vanessa Riley. We have it's a young woman that writes the Scottish books. I can never think of her name. I can see her face. She'll come to me in the middle of the night. But it is expanding, and because you guys are buying them. Just don't just buy Black books just because it's Black History Month, please.
Yeah, please.
These authors could use your support all year round.
Yeah.
So I don't know, girl, I get up here on this soapbox. We'll be here till Tuesday.
No, I know. Don't get me on there too. And this is actually perfect timing for one of the audience questions. And I'll actually start with you, Jasmine, for this, because it was one of the questions I had on my list, which is, you write these stories with Black female characters and Black heroes, and it's just so refreshing to have that. And I'm wondering, why do you think it's important to highlight those specific characters in your books? And what is the value when we have not just one author, but I was going to say 10 or 12, but it's really more like a handful, but still, yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I think one of the great things is like, I mean, my books are not about me, but I write from my own worldview and from my own experience, right? And so it is great to be able to read other books by Black people writing about Black people from their very different world experiences that are about very different love stories that, like, you know, I never want to be like, oh, well, I read a book about by Jasmine Guillory, and therefore I know about Black people.
Right.
Right? Like that, that is not, like, I am not the voice of Black romance.
Right.
And it is great to be able to have so many different voices that, you know, I can spend, you know, a month reading books by and about, like, romance novels by and about Black women and still have lots. And that is so exciting for me.
Yeah. And you know, were you going to say something, Beverly?
And I think the media does not do us a service by not highlighting all of these women that are out there writing from a Black gaze.
Yeah.
It's not a handful; it's hundreds.
Yeah.
It's you know, 40 or 50 traditional. We could fill a room here with the indies who are writing everything from paranormal to mysteries to erotica to cozies. So to say that, you know, there's only a few is not really the real picture.
Yeah.
And media needs to stop using that as an excuse as to why they're not covering everyone.
And I think you make a good point too, bringing up the indies, because there's such a vibrant space for romance in self-publishing, which is really, I feel like, taking off more and more. And we've talked a little bit about how publishing is like, yeah, it's gotten better. And sometimes I almost worry about using that kind of language because I fear then we've reached a point where maybe publishing will come at it from the perspective of, well, we've done it. We have diversified romance, and it's no more, you know, or like we like you were saying, Jasmine, like you don't want people to come to your books and say like, this is the one
Black experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But, you know, I'm wondering, we are talking about diversity and how things have gotten better, but are there ways that you really wish things would change still?
Need more diversity in editorial.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, yes. I mean, I think obviously, like the writers are there. It's really on the publishing side, having people for whom this is not a, like, they're not saying like, well, I don't know where we would sell this to, or, you know, because it's editorial, but also the sales team and the marketing team and the publicity team who can, like, who both know how to sell the books, but also care about the books in the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, and on the editorial side, quick story. I had a copy editor. I had the phrase was putting something on the down low. We all know what that means, you know, keep it secret, whatever. And the copy editor wrote, bad grammar.
Oh.
You should say,
Right.
put it on the low shelf.
Put it on the low shelf.
How about I don't say that? And I wrote in the margin, reason number 865, we need more people of color in editorial.
Did that note disappear after you? But it's true what you're saying about editorial. Like, you know, as someone who receives pitches frequently, like I would say probably only really do get a handful. And that really does shape, I guess, the picture that I have, even as an avid romance reader, of what is actually out there. So if things aren't coming to me on the table and I don't know where to look, and I experience that as a person who's spending a lot of time thinking about the genre, and then you think about the average reader who walks into a bookstore, what's on the table, right? Like, who are the same few authors that are going to be on the table?
It's bookstores and also libraries, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, when I started reading, when I was, you know, reading hundreds of romance novels a year, like I was not buying 300 romance novels. I was like getting most of them from my library. And my library, I mean, thank goodness it's bookstores and libraries have gotten a lot better, but did not have a lot of romance novels by authors of color at that time.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy to see like that they have grown by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
But those leaps and bounds are still not quite high enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this might be a good time to actually talk about how some subgenres are popping up in the romance space. And this is going to be a question for you, Allie, because we're seeing a lot of romantasy. Do we have any romantasy fans? Yeah? That's good. And your most recent book, Bride, it really goes there. And I say that with all due respect because I loved that it went there. And I'm curious about how you made that shift from writing contemporaries to writing a werewolf vampire romance. I mean, let's also clarify for the record that romantasy was not invented in the last 1 year or 2 years. Paranormal romance has been around as long as we have been able to think about vampires or werewolves or anything paranormal. But with that disclaimer said, your perspective. Woo!
It's funny because when I was writing this book in the winter of 2022, yes, in the winter of 20, and I turned it in, and I think at the time I had never heard the word romantasy. I think it's a kind of a new word. Like for me, it was just a paranormal romance, like Nalini Singh and J.R. Ward and Christine Feehan would write, or Cressley Cole, and I would read all of these authors, when I was a teenager or in my early 20s.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I thought of it. And I remember when we announced the book, someone was like, "Oh, I'm so happy you're writing a romantasy," and I was like, "Am I writing a romantasy?"
News to me.
There are no dragons, but like
Not yet.
I'll take it. Yeah, exactly. I'll take it if it works. What was the question?
No, I know. I too was started thinking about dragons. And we do have a question from the audience. Will Bride have a sequel? Wink, wink.
So I am not under contract for the sequel at this point. I think we were waiting to see how the first one would do. So yeah, I don't know. It's publishing is one of those things where you never know, but like they let me write a sequel, I will write a sequel. Yeah.
Will there be dragons? Can you confirm?
I mean, think about the things we can do with like dragons and weird sexy stuff. I'm just saying, I would love to put dragons in it.
One of the things that we kind of have to talk about is, well, we don't have to, but I want to. We have to talk about, as the people say, spice in romance, or we could just say sex. And I think we were talking a little bit earlier about how people have kind of, poo-pooed romance. And sometimes I feel like you still sort of hear that criticism of like, oh, it's just smut. Like people just like smut. And romance novels, I feel like, are some of the only places where you can read sex scenes from the perspective of a woman. And I view them as essential to the romantic story that's being told. But I'm curious about your perspective, all of you, having written those scenes and maybe seen the reader's responses to that. Beverly, do you want to start?
It's basically the only genre where women get to decide their own sexuality, where we get to embrace our own sexuality. And that's a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Which is why a whole lot of people hate it. I mean, we can get into the whole academic stuff and all of that, but I think we write it because we love it. We love women taking care of themselves. Who doesn't want a partner? They say, well, romance makes you, it's unrealistic. What is unrealistic about wanting a partner, regardless of the identity, who supports your dreams?
Yeah.
What's unrealistic about a partner who treats you fairly, who walks with you and not in front of you or behind you? I think we're doing pretty good, you know?
Yeah.
I think we're doing okay.
Yeah. What about you, Jasmine? What do you think about when you are crafting those kinds of scenes?
I mean, for me, they really are about like where characters are in the moment in their relationship. And so thinking about like, you know, this is a story about two people falling in love with one another. And so how are the sex scenes a part of that? Like how do things change between them throughout the course of, you know, the relationship in the book? Like how do they become more tender, or how do they have like, what are their conversations like? How do they fall in love with each other? And how is like the sex is part of that. And I think that's really fun to show. And I think it's also fun to show like, yes, like women having pleasure and embracing that and like not being ashamed of it.
Yeah. And the classic, as you were talking, I was thinking about how there's always the classic, it means nothing. It didn't mean anything, but it didn't mean anything to you, right? And then you get like another 100 pages of drama.
Yeah.
It's sometimes the sex scenes are like, they kind of help, I feel, further the plot. And they're not gratuitous, in my view. What about you, Allie? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything, but I also think that sometimes the sex scenes are just there for the smart. And I'm totally okay with it.
Give you filth.
Yeah, reading filth. Speaking of filth, a sentence I didn't think I would say. You started in the fanfic realm. Woo! Can we get a woo woo? And I am a self-professed lifelong fanfic reader. And I think that's one of those other things too that people sometimes feel a little awkward about admitting. But it's a really unique thing, I think, to have come from a fandom space and to a romance space where you still have like rabid fans. It's just kind of a different, maybe you even took some fans over from fanfic. So I'm curious about what writing in that community really taught you about writing chemistry between characters.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I say this all the time and then I like kind of cry while I say this, but fan fiction and fandom in general have given me everything. I found fandom at a moment when I was really alone. I was finishing my PhD. I had been still reading romance, but I was at a time where I was completely like depleted of any sort of creative energy because I was writing my dissertation and I hated it. And, and I remember like finding fandom and finding friends through fandom. And, you know, the friends that you find through shared interests are very particular friends and they're like nothing else. And like my best friends now are the people that I met during those years. And not just that, like when your closest friends are out there saying, oh yes, do write 5,000 words of Spock having 3 dicks and having sex, and having sex with Kirk, like it's so hard to feel embarrassed about like enjoying reading or writing smart. Like I know we are in this very cringe culture right now. But like I just, because of the people that I'm surrounded with that I met through fandom, because I know that there are, thousands of people who like that kind of stuff. It's so empowering to me. Like I literally could be called cringe for the rest of my life and I still would be like, yes, but my friend Jen loves it when I write. And that's all that matters.
I love it. And I think that's how I feel about romance too, and fanfic in general. It's like, I actually, by embracing it, I feel like I've become way less embarrassed about like so many other things, because it's like, oh, you want to read a romance about this? Well, guess what? Because I have the recommendation for this exact specific niche thing you need. And there are so many people who want that, like who are looking for it.
Yeah, so like I remember when Morning Glory Milking Farm exploded on Twitter and people were like, oh, I am reading about this Minotaur. And I was like, welcome.
We've been waiting. Well, speaking of kind of venturing in new directions, I'm curious, Beverly and Jasmine, are there genres that you want to try your hand at, or types of stories that you'd like to write that you haven't?
There be dragons.
There be dragons. I can't believe the theme of this night is dragons.
I'm a big fantasy reader. And we have very few black women riding dragons. So we'll see what the future holds.
Ooh. What about you, Jasmine?
I think there's so many things that I love reading that maybe I would want to write someday. I love children's books. I love young adult. I love a mystery. I don't know if I could write a mystery, but I read them constantly. So maybe
And
someday.
I love a little mystery and a little romance.
I do too. I do love a little mystery and romance together.
Nora Roberts, anyone?
Yeah. They're solving the murder together.
I did promise backstory, or actually Amy promised backstory, and I'm going to deliver your backstories, to be specific. Not the whole thing, just how you kind of got into romance, and you all kind of came from professional, not romance adjacent careers or writing adjacent careers. Beverly, I think you were working in pharmaceutical, is that right?
In a pharmaceutical library.
Right. And Jasmine, you went to law school and you worked in corporate law for a really long time. And Allie, you're a neuroscientist by training. So I'm curious about what pulled you into romance from those careers. And also, was it hard to make that transition? Beverly, no. Pharmaceuticals, romance.
Well, I was writing for me.
Yeah.
My goal was not to even be a writer.
Yeah.
I was this was something that I did after work, and then a friend at work got published. I told her about this little raggedy manuscript I was working on. She told me to bring it in. She read it. She said, "Get this published," and she harassed me every day. So to shut her up, that's how I got into romance.
Have you sent her a thank you card in the years since? What about you, Jasmine? Law and then romance?
I mean, sometimes people ask me, "Do you miss working as a lawyer?" And no. The answer always, the one thing that I do miss is I miss having coworkers.
Yeah.
So, which is why I really love events like this where, because writers are always kind of in our own little holes doing our work. And it is nice to actually get to have conversations with other writers.
Yeah.
And to get to actually meet readers. But no, I do not miss being a lawyer.
And what about you, Allie?
Yeah, honestly, the hardest part of transitioning to writing as a career is just that it feels like such an unstable career. It's I need health insurance. What am I gonna do about that?
Yeah.
And things like that. What if the payment schedule, for example, is very weird in publishing? What if I don't make money for a year because something happens? So that was, I think, for me, the hardest part.
Yes, applying for a mortgage as a writer is real interesting. Nobody understands how we get paid because we don't either. But it was. Yeah.
I would love for us to be living in the age of rom-coms again, and I think we are in some ways. But I'm talking specifically about screen adaptations. Both TV shows, we've seen the success of Bridgerton, and as Beverly and I were talking about backstage, it's awesome that we have that, but there are, tons of authors who are writing historical romance, who are authors of color, whose series have not necessarily been picked up. And we are getting some rom-coms, but I'm not sure they're meeting the same level of rom-com classic. You guys know, the early 2000s.
They have no romance writers in the writing room.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's weird because, I did see Anyone But You, which was a fun time, but I remember when the promotion for it came out, it was all charged glances and just it felt like the basis of that promotion that they thought people wanted from the romance was the physical chemistry between the two characters. And often I find
it's the banter.
It's the banter.
Know. It's always the banter.
When I watched the movie, I was like, oh, they're having fun. And that's kind of what I wanted. So, if you guys were to be approached at the table with hey, we want to turn your book into the next great rom-com or the next great Netflix show, would you have some feelings about that, positive or negative?
Depends on who's in the writer's room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm greedy. I want all 60 books on the screen.
Where is the Beverly Jenkins like multiverse?
I need a channel.
Exactly. Yeah.
My own channel, Bev TV.
TV. What about you, Allie? Would you love a Love Hypothesis rom-com adaptation?
I mean, I would love for my books to be adapted. I hear you make a lot of money. When that
And as we talked about, payment schedules, you never know.
but no, like honestly, I'm gonna be honest. Like when the option, sometimes your books get optioned,
Yeah.
but like then you basically don't get any control over whether they get made or not. Mm-hmm. So this is one of those things where I sort of stopped thinking about it, and I'm like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, who cares? It's just the only way of maintaining sanity. I mean, it would be so cool if it happened. But
who knows? Who knows?
I think the writer's strike, has made things a lot better, but I think it has also slowed down a bunch of things and adaptations. So I don't know. I'm glad they got what I got. So
We have an audience question. It's very specific for Jasmine. Okay. When are we getting the TV series or movie based on the wedding date storyline / characters? We need to know now.
yes, Jasmine, when?
Look,
when?
Yes, Jasmine, when?
As I said, I wish I had any idea of any of that. Yes, I hope that happens. But when I know something, I mean, I'm not going to say when I know something, I'll tell you that's not true. But when I know something and then am able to tell anyone, I certainly will. But I know nothing at the moment.
And we've talked a little bit, I don't think we've actually talked about this yet, but book talk and the explosion of book talk. And Allie, I know it's been big for you and for your books. And I'm curious about, like, from the perspective of all of you, like, has it brought you new readers? Do you feel, I guess, comfortable with
I can't be on Instagram. I cannot be on Book Talk. If I'm on another social media platform, my editors will run away from home.
Well, they may be running away from home to come find you.
Yeah, because I love me some Twitter.
I know. It is really
We
hard
all
to quit.
know Miss Bev on Twitter. Well, now it's X.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's brought me a few new readers, but most of my readers have come through either Facebook or now Blue Sky, because I'm on Blue Sky,
Yeah.
and X.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I am not on Book Talk or on TikTok at all because I feel like we all have to play to our strengths, and I don't know how to do that. Which I am happy that other people do, and so I am very excited when like other people talk about my books on TikTok, and then nobody wants me to make some awkward. How do you do, fellow kids? On
So are you confirming there will be no Jasmine Guillory dance book talk?
Jasmine Guillory dance talk.
Jasmine, how do you do, fellow kids? Is literally my bio on TikTok.
Exactly.
Allie, book talk has been sort of like a big launcher for you and for your books, and they've brought in a lot of readers. I'm curious, like, how do you see the power of readers in romance?
Yeah, I mean, it's through nothing that I have done that Book Talk has helped me. Like, I am there. How do you do, fellow kids? I will sometimes make a TikTok about something I crocheted or whatever.
Crochet.
But, like, there is nothing of value in what I do that actually sells me book. It's about, the readers.
Yeah.
I think the cool thing of Book Talk is that it's something that, even publishers don't understand. And I kind of love that.
Yeah.
It's really just, these readers who like something and they will be very honest about it. And I kind of love that. I know it doesn't benefit me that publishing cannot like harness the power of TikTok or Book Talk, but I love that it's kind of like this grassroots thing.
Yeah. Do you feel like, and this is one of the audience questions, it's changed your approach to writing in any way? Like, when you all are writing, are you thinking about the reader that's going to receive it, or do you kind of have to stay focused on the craft at that time?
I can't think about the reader when I'm
Yeah.
reading, because it just gets into your, like, for me, it would just, like, there's a period, I think a lot of people talk about sort of the second book syndrome where you're kind of thinking about the reader. That didn't hit me until my third book, but only because, like, I wrote my first 2 books before any books were out, right?
Yeah.
And so while I was working on my third book, I was like, oh, well, I saw someone say on Twitter that they don't like books that do this. Is my book doing this? Or like all of that. And then I was like, I can't think about any of that. Like I don't even know who that person was who said that on Twitter. Like, why do I care about that? But like, if, things can, like, the only thing I can have in my head is myself when I'm writing. I worry about all of that when it's publication time.
Yeah.
But when it's writing time, I just can't think about it.
Yeah. What about you, Beverly? You're pretty active on Twitter.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you have confessed.
It got to the point, at the height of Twitter, I could see my editor in her office stomping her foot. Go to work. Get off of Twitter and go to work.
We have a couple questions about craft, actually. So I'm curious about each of your different writing styles or how you approach writing romance novels, because I know writing in general, there's people who really like to outline, and I really love to outline. And then we have, and I'm not making this turn up, it's actually called it's not pantsing, it's a pantser. Yeah. Like someone who...
I think it is called pantsing.
Is it called pantsing? I thought that was actually when you... Anyway. Yeah. But, there are writers who are pantsers, and Beverly, I think you might be one of them.
I mean, we all bring something different to the table. We all write differently. And just because I write, pantsing, doesn't mean that you should write pantsing. Your method is your method.
Yeah.
So you write with whatever is comfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I may have a kernel of a story or a kernel of a character, and if I have to outline, and it's like all the energy for me is gone from the story. So for me, it's organic. I like not knowing what's going to happen on the next page, just like the reader. It gets me in trouble sometimes. Not in a writing kind of way, but I remember a character wound up in the swamps of Texas, and I was like, "Are there swamps in Texas?"
You're like, how did we get here?
I had to go get the atlas.
Not Google Maps.
Yeah. So, it's exciting for me.
Okay, I have a question about that, though. You do a ton of research for your books. So how do you like sort of write and then go back and do the research? Or
that's a good
how
question.
Does that...
I research as I go. Because, I'm following the characters, right? And they're going through my head into the swamps of Texas. And I'm like, what the fuck is this? Are there swamps in Texas?
Well, are there?
And there were.
There were.
There we go.
And it was a part of the story that I didn't even know we were going there. And one of the main characters was in that swamp.
And if there'd been a monster in the swamp, then you would have had a swamp monster romance.
Yeah.
There we go.
This was an Always and Forever.
Yeah.
So,
what about you, Allie? What's your writing style, your craft?
I am, and this is not my term. I wish I could claim this term, but I can't. I learned it from Adriana Herrera, who apparently learned it from Sierra Simone. I am a panty liner. Which means that
Not the panty
panty liner. I wish I could claim it. So the idea of the panty liner is that you have some kind of outline, but then you feel it. I know. It's the perfect term.
I love it. See what happens when you hang around with romance writers.
It's going to take me a minute to recover from that.
I love it.
While I recover, I am supposed to explain pantser and panty liner. So pantser is when you outline heavily, and as Allie has...
Opposite. Outliner is when you outline.
You're right.
heavily.
I got confused because I was thinking about panty liner. My brain is just going panty liner. The opposite. Thank you, Jasmine.
Yes.
And then panty liner, as Allie has outlined, it seems like vibes and an outline.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is mostly, I think, because of publishing, especially, like, usually we have to turn in the outline to, or at least my editor wants
Yeah.
to know what I'm going to write. And so
Yeah.
she's like, okay, outline it.
Yeah.
And so that's usually what I do, not in super detail. And then you kind of, like, I have, like, second act in which they hang out and do stuff.
In which they hang out. Well, one of the questions we've been getting, and this is one I've been saving for the end, is romance is a lot about tropes. It's a joy to me how tropey romance is. And I don't know if people can see, but I'm wearing a pin. It says slow burn specialist. I had to choose between one that said enemies to lover specialist, which is my favorite trope, and another that said mutual pining specialist. A little picture of 2 pine trees. So my favorite trope to read is enemies to lovers, but when it's done right, which is hard to do. And I'm curious for each of you what your favorite trope to read is and what your favorite trope to write is, because those might be 2 different things. Allie, we'll start with you.
I really like fated mates, which I know a lot of people hate insta love, but I really, really like when there is some kind of, things that is bigger than the couple that kind of pushes them together. I like it even better if there is something that prevents them from being together. Yeah, I really love that. And I've really enjoyed, I only wrote it once for traditional publishing, and I really enjoyed it. And I enjoy reading it, so.
Yeah.
I love fake dating. Just love it. As I have written a few books that involve fake dating, including my first, and I think it's so fun. And I love to read it and write it, but I also really love to read A Marriage of Convenience.
Oh,
And they
yes.
fall in love. Oh, the best.
And it's the best too, because you can fit in so many other tropes.
Yeah.
Like they're married for convenience and they hate each other.
Yeah.
Or they're married for convenience and they've been childhood friends.
Yeah.
Like it's like
many
the
other
Russian
things.
doll of tropes. I
Yeah.
love it. I love it.
Yeah.
What
I love
about
it.
you, Beverly?
Marriage or convenience.
Yes.
I read them, I write them, I love them.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. We have a question which I really want to make sure we have time for. Someone is asking, as someone who's been trying to break into the romance genre, I'm wondering, other than never giving up, what's the best advice for making it happen?
Finish the book. Finish the book.
Yeah.
That. But also read a lot.
Yeah.
Read a lot and think about why specific things in those books are successful. What is it about these 2 characters getting together that works for you? And how do you want to tell that specific story, right? Because sometimes, it usually, talking about kind of crafting and writing, it usually takes me a while to kind of figure out the core of what these 2 characters are doing and why they're together. And that's something that I have to keep thinking about. Even during this conversation, I've had ideas for how I can make the book that I'm currently working on better. And so and that's something that I get through talking to other writers and reading books. So I think just doing that a lot.
Yeah. What about you, Allie?
Well, I agree with this. I am just saying, this is for a later stage, but in case what happens is that you have finished your book and it's a good book, and for some reason traditional publishing doesn't pick it up, because it happens. There are a lot of blind spots in editorial, I think, in publishing, and there are certain books that are just not picked up because, for several reasons. I say it as a traditionally published author, but there are independent publishing for romance especially is definitely an option. Indie authors, I am on Kindle Unlimited and I read so many indie books and I love them. And there are a lot of resources, free resources for you online to help you publish. So, and this is just in case it doesn't work out for you in traditional publishing. Just saying, this is
There are a lot of scammers too. So let's do what
free.
Allie said. There's a lot of free resources.
Yeah.
Don't pay people money.
Do not pay anybody to publish you.
Yeah.
Good advice. And I'm
Do
glad
not pay anybody to publish you.
No, you have to say it twice because
Yeah.
I have seen people like say I just paid an
No.
agent to
There's
represent
people out
me.
here who want to steal your dreams.
Yeah. Yeah.
And not for your dreams. They want your money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is it? Writer beware.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beware.
So we don't end on that depressing note.
No.
I'm a romance reader. Many people here are romance readers, and I know you all are romance readers. So I'd love to end on one romance novel, your favorite, or just one you think more people should read that people can go and pick up or get on Kindle Unlimited after this event. So we'll start with you, Beverly.
Shameless plug.
Yes.
Destiny Surrender by me.
I love that book.
You got to market yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. What about you, Jasmine?
There's one that's coming out next week. Yeah, it's next week that I really loved, called At Her Service by Amy Spalding. Everybody should pick it up.
Okay, this is a book that came out. What day is today? Yes, yesterday, 2 days ago. It's Sex, Lies, and Sensibility.
Yes.
By
Oh, I
Nikki
love that
Payne.
book.
Yes.
Yeah.
So good.
I am obsessed with Nikki Payne. Like, I think one of these days she's gonna take out like an order against me and be like, stop it, because I am truly obsessed with her. So, Pride and Protest was my favorite book of last year. It's my favorite Pride and Prejudice adaptation. She's just so funny.
Yeah.
And Sex, Lies, and Sensibility is kind of a sequel, but like not really. You can read it as a standalone. Although if you love the characters in Pride and Protest, you're gonna see them again. And nothing, it's just perfect. She is funny. She makes me cry every time. And
It's set in Maine.
Set in
for
Maine.
It's
New
so
England
good.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
so
It's so good.
I highly recommend it. Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good. And we have one more thing for tonight. It is actually Beverly Jenkins' birthday today.
Oh
Happy birthday. And we have a little bit of cake. And wait. I'm going to count down so we're all... You guys already beat me to it. I was going to ask you all
They
to
won't let me put a candle in it. It's against rules, but we're going to sing happy birthday.
So I'm going to count down, and after, so I'm going to say 3, 2, 1, and then after 1 is when we'll all start. Okay? All right. 3, 2, 1. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Beverly. Happy birthday to you.
This is what 73 looks like.
Thank you for spending your birthday with us. Thank you all for spending Beverly's birthday with us.
Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it.
I've had so
And the
much
cake.
fun. My earring has literally come off from nodding too much. But thank you all so much for coming out tonight. We really have had a great time. I mean, I'm speaking for me, but...
Thank you, everybody. Come out and meet them in person. They'll be signing books. Check out what's coming up next at CitySpace. Thank you.
Woo!